Ah, bom, olá, sejam muito bem-vindos. Em nome da ICF Brasil, agradecemos a presença de cada um de vocês nessa sessão da International Coaching Week. Agradecemos especialmente aos nossos patrocinadores Ouro, Stream.io e Nexi, e patrocinador Prata, a LHH. Meu nome é Flávio Kosminski, junto comigo estão Juliana Lima no apoio e o Gustavo, nosso intérprete. A International Coaching Federation é a maior associação global de coaching, presente em mais de 140 países e com mais de 60 mil membros ao redor do mundo. Durante esta semana, que vai de 12 a 18 de maio, estamos celebrando a International Coaching Week com eventos em mais de 20 idiomas. Temos no Brasil uma programação especial, gratuita e preparada com muito carinho. O link com a programação completa será compartilhado no chat. Aproveitem também para seguir nas nossas redes sociais LinkedIn e Instagram, @ICF Brasil. Os links também estão no chat. Informamos que este evento está sendo gravado e lembramos que, para respeitar os acordos com nossos palestrantes e participantes, pedimos que não usem robôs ou inteligência artificial para gravação ou transcrição dessa sessão. Se você é associado da ICF Brasil, você poderá solicitar seu certificado de participação preenchendo o formulário que será disponibilizado no chat ao final do evento. Nesse mesmo formulário, por favor, avalie o evento, deixe seu depoimento e, se quiser, grave um vídeo contando sobre sua experiência com a ICW. Para os associados da ICF Brasil, temos um convite especial. Estamos lançando o programa de coaching Pro Bono International Coaching Week 2025 através da parceria com a Ensina Brasil. A Ensina Brasil desenvolve lideranças que atuam como professores em escolas públicas de comunidades vulneráveis por 2 anos, preparando-os para liderar mudanças em diversos setores. Mas essa transformação não para por aí. Ela começa com você, coach associado da ICF, como parte dessa jornada de impacto social, apoiando líderes em formação, ajudando-os a superar desafios e a potencializar seu propósito de transformar realidades. Gostaríamos de ter você como voluntário e perguntamos se você está pronto para liderar essa mudança. O link para se candidatar a este programa de coaching pro bono e obter mais informações também será disponibilizado no chat. Vamos lá. Para iniciar o painel, gostaria de dar as boas-vindas ao nosso convidado, professor Richard Larson, que possui 2 doutorados em fatores estratégicos, organizacionais e individuais para a melhor mudança estratégica. O professor Larson é sócio cofundador da Decision Dynamics, que oferece soluções e consultoria em gestão de talentos, liderança e mudança. Suas pesquisas foram publicadas em revistas como Academy of Management, Harvard Business Review, Human Relations e Organization Science. Ele tem trabalhado com corporações como a Zea Brown Boveri, Albea, Barilla, Ericsson, Banco Europeu de Investimentos, H&M, IKEA, Korn Ferry International, Sony, Tetra Pak, Volvo e outras. Bem-vindo, professor Larson. You have the podium.
Thank you very much. Let me share some slides here. And like that, I hope. Okay, so I hope you can all see and I'm happy to talk to you about engaging leadership and career development and change issues. Decision Dynamics offers solutions when it comes to identifying future leaders, developing more engaging leadership, and strengthening employee engagement in different ways. We base that on more than 50 years of research and practice in the areas of leadership and talent management, where we have been, as Flavio kindly presented, we have both published well and worked with great companies across the world. In 2020, 5 years ago, we talked about different decision styles in the VUCA plus world, the VUCA being volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And since we are now have no less VUCA plus world now, let's talk about engaging leadership, career development, and change in this situation using Decision Dynamics career model, which consists of 4 different career concepts and sets of career motives. And they can be used for greater engaging career insights about ourselves and others. We can also improve the career dynamics of our leadership pipelines in organizations, and how we can avoid the common resistance to change with more engaging leadership of change, and how we can also develop more valuable everyday engagement with these career insights. And guess what? Coaching can facilitate all these 5 issues. It really is a career gold mine for coaches that we will be talking about today. But let's start with good leadership. What is that? Well, think about your best manager that you've had so far in your career, and write down 3 to 5 factors that made this manager so good.
A senhora respondeu o questionário a meu respeito?
And if 10 of us would share these factors that we have written down, we typically would get a consolidated list of 20 to 30 different success factors. And that's one explanation why when you look at manager job ads, they tend to be a long, wishful shopping list of many success factors. And the bad news is that there rarely exist, perhaps never exist, these super managers that have all of these 20 to 30 success factors and none of any failure factors. But the good news is that we don't need such super managers that are good at everything. And one reason is what we call the leadership pipeline. So let's look at more, what is this leadership pipeline? The leadership pipeline is basically the flow of managers through an organization, from the first level supervisors via middle managers to higher managers. And a key pattern that we have found in our research, and many others have found too, is that leadership is not the same irrespective of the level. So what is good leadership at the supervisory level has such success factors such as being action-oriented, a drive for results, perseverance, specialization, focus, which is very different from the success factors at the higher managerial levels, where we are talking about more long-term vision, strategy, the wide variety of persons that are stakeholders, and more holistic perspective rather than specialized ones. And we have learned that we need to provide more of these competences that are important as managers climb. So you get a more supervisory leadership development as a new leader, but then as you are being promoted, we add some of these more high level competences in terms of leadership development and coaching. What we often forget is that what made us good at the previous level is something that we often stick to, and instead of actually toning it down. And this is a source of problems that we will soon look more into. But we can do that with the help of decision dynamics career model. So let's introduce this career model that consists of 4 different career concepts. They represent a view of what is success in your working life, and they consist also of a direction of how you move within your working life and how long you tend to stay in one field, the duration. And the first and most classical career concept is expert, where you try to become as good as possible for as long as possible by in-depth specialization that you stick to. And you identify so much with this professional choice that if somebody asks you who you are, you answer, I am an engineer, or I am a teacher. It doesn't have to be academic or high tech. It can be any profession that you like to specialize in and become as good as possible for as long as possible. The second career concept is called linear. And if experts are their career that I identify with, linear make their career by climbing upwards the corporate ladder. The higher up, the more successful, and the faster you're able to move, the better. So if there is a lot of internal promotion, you tend to stay longer in that organization. If it's not much internal promotion, you tend to log jump to between organizations, because that is probably the faster way. And these are the 2 classical ways of looking at our careers. But they are not enough. We have found 2 more important career concepts that we like to add to the picture. And the first one is called spiral, that neither are nor make their career, they discover their career. They think that most of us become taught that we should become an expert or a manager, and spiral is taught to do that too, and they start out pursuing that, and that's nice until 5-6 years. Motivation goes down, and you stand like a question mark in front of your bathroom mirror in the morning and wondering who you are and what you're doing, and the people around you are wondering even more. You have a great job, what's the problem? The problem is there is something missing, but it's hard to figure out what it is, and it can take years before you discover this new related activity that feels more engaging to you. So go, okay, a little bit wrong, but now I'm on the right track. But give it 5-6 more years, motivation goes down again, and hopefully the question mark will be a little bit smaller. You'll be searching more systematically, what's missing this time? And when you find that, you go, whoa, what if I change every 5 years? Wouldn't that be a great career? It's just that it can take 20 years to find out that you should change every 5 years, because this is not what we typically taught. I myself is this spiral who went from only research to teaching once I don't have to teach in accounting. And then when this was a popular model for in practice, then we started a consultancy business in Europe for 30 years ago or so. And I've been able to mix between research accounting and research teaching and consulting for the whole of my career. And finally, we have the transitory career that changes as often as possible to as different things as possible. My favorite transitory was a woman who came up to me after a presentation, said, I must be a transitory. I worked both in heaven and hell. And by that, she meant both in a church congregation and in the engine room of a freight ship. And when I presented this to a Swedish religious organization, there were 3 priests in the audience. And one of the priests raised his hand and said, which one was heaven and which one was hell? So sometimes not all church congregations are perfect. Anyway, she also worked in retail, in media, in teaching, in manufacturing. She was offered early retirement because of a back injury. In sheer protest, she took a heavy truck driver's license and became a truck driver. And most recently, which I actually don't know if it is most recently any longer, her son called her up on a Friday evening and said, "Mom, there is a management position open down here. You've never been a manager before. Wouldn't that be interesting? The deadline is on Monday." So over the weekend, she writes an application, sends it in. 2 interviews later, she gets a job. So over a period of 20 years, she had 10 different jobs that had nothing in common. The only time she stayed longer than 2 years was either when she had a baby or when she was in divorce. So it wasn't like she was unlucky or incompetent. All her managers wanted to keep her, but the only time she stayed longer than 2 years was when there was some chaos in her private life. So these are the 4 different career concepts, from the most stable expert, traditional, to the most changing, transitory. And they are all not only 4 different paths to develop in our working life, there are also 4 different views of how we view other people's careers. So if we take on the spectacle of an expert and look at another expert, we see one who is serious, but wrong, because we as an expert know, of course, which is the most right way to do things. Expert looking at the linear sees someone who decides more than he knows. Looking at the spiral, they lack focus, look promising in the beginning, but don't have the stamina. And then the worst of them all in the eyes of the expert is transitory. That's jack of all trades, master of none. If we switch spectacles and take on the linear spectacles and look at an expert, we see a management problem. Yes, they're good at what they do, but they ask difficult questions. They don't like change, and if you promote the best one, the ungrateful bastard says no, thank you, or they even they become a bad manager. So what do you do with them? This is a very common misunderstanding between a linear boss and let's say, an expert engineer. A linear looking at another linear sees someone who's goal-oriented, but it can also be a competitor, or they're out trying to get my position or even jump above me. And a spiral, don't they know which way is up? They must have a faulty compass. And the transitory basically have a hopeless CV with going in all that different directions. Switch spectacles again, spiral look at an expert, see someone who is overly specialized. The linear are sacrificing their personal development for the sake of their careers, and that doesn't sound very good. And then the first really positive, a spiral meeting another spiral, telling their spiral stories. That sounds really interesting. I could imagine me doing that too. But jumping around without any red thread and no sense of direction, isn't that pretty wasteful as a transitory? And finally, transitory viewing experts as rigid or narrow-minded, and the linear is conventional careerists, not very fun. Spiral are rather flexible, but don't dare to take so many wide, fast turns. But if they happen to bump into another transitory, that was a free-spirited soul. So this is one of our more popular slides because it has some humor built into it. It's a bit of an appetizer in the sense of which spectacles do you recognize yourself? But the most important with this slide is out of 16 combinations, there are only 2 that are really positive. A spiral discovering another spiral, and a transitory bumping into another transitory. All the other 14 combination has different dirt on their lenses, where they rather see trouble and lack of talent. That's what we call talent blind spots. Instead of appreciating that all of these career concepts are actually needed. we have a different slide, which we don't have time to get into now, that has 16 positive ways of viewing each other, that breeds respect and appreciation rather than distrust, as this one do. Now, you're not just one of these career concepts. You actually, all of us have often a combination of at least two. And so we measure all four with 38 questions, and 18 of those questions are about your ideal concept. So the higher the blue bar, the more ideal you view that career. So Sandra, in this case, is primarily interested in the linear career, upward. That's the highest blue bar. And spiral is the second highest. So yes, she's okay with going a bit sideways, especially if it helps her to climb higher the next time. At the same time, very low blue bars rather indicate they are nightmares. And Sandra has dual nightmares. She don't want to get stuck as an expert with no movement upwards, or jumping around with a hopeless CV as a transitory. But then a very important part of this tool is that we not only measure what we think is the most ideal within our head, which is the blue bars, but we also measure the underlying motives. And they can be also oriented in these different directions. And in Sandra's case, her highest motives matches her highest concept, and the second highest also. Basically, they're almost identical. And the bad news is that there isn't even 1% of us that have such a close alignment between our heads and our hearts. A more common profile is Joe's. What can we say about Joe's profile? If he was promoted, would he accept the promotion upward? And of course he would. He dreams just like Sandra about climbing upwards. So promotion sounds good, looks good, and he will say a big yes with his mouth, but that's all above the neck. 6 months later, is Joe a happy manager? No. When did you have fun at work last, Joe? Well, that was when I was specializing on this favorite molecule of mine. Well, have you had time to work with your molecule since you became manager? No, I've just been administrating other people. Whoops, so I'm probably making a career on other people's terms. Remember, in the US, around 50% of the population is dreaming about becoming a linear manager. And only 10% can become managers at one point in time. So that's a national tragedy. But in other countries like Sweden and Scandinavia, more than 50% want to go sideways, spiral. So we learn different career concepts in our heads, but we keep fooling our underlying hearts because more than 60% of us have a highest blue bar that points in a different direction from the highest red bar. And that's where we start wasting our engagement potential, where we could have been more engaged if we haven't been fooled to pursue what we think ought to be the most ideal career direction. And this is where the gold mine for career coaching, and actually most other coaching also, begins by this lack of self-insight into would be the most engaging for ourselves. So when most of us don't know that, how can we take greater responsibility for our own engagement? And how can our bosses know if we don't know ourselves? And still we put all the responsibility for our engagement on our bosses, even though they have a lot of other responsibilities. And we have these difficult annual developmental dialogues and reward dialogues that are supposed to engage us for the next 364 days. Think about how much simpler it would be if more of us discovered our most engaging career motives. Then we can take greater own responsibility for our engagement. We can relieve some of our bosses from many of their responsibilities that include engaging us more. We can even tell our bosses what engages us the more with greater precision, so they can become more engaging leaders. And then we can have simple, engaging, everyday dialogue about progress, development, and other daily rewards. And guess what? All of these goodies can be facilitated by coaching using this tool. If we turn back to the leadership pipeline, then how can the career model be applied there? Well, we have done a huge study of about 180,000 managers in 50 countries that was published in Harvard Business Review. We talked about the decision style findings of that 5 years ago. Now we're talking about the career findings. If we look at the top managers at each of these 5 levels, from supervisor all the way up to CEO, we can see that the best supervisors are experts with a backup of some linear, spiral, and transitory. But we can then see that already at the middle manager level, you need all 4 of these concepts in some kind of balance where it works best. And then the higher up you go, the more linear, spiral, transitory, that is more dynamic, more upward, more holistic, and the less expert you need. So we can talk about the lens of success, where the success profile at the lowest managerial level of supervisor becomes inverted or mirror image, or the opposite of the success profile at the higher levels. And we can see that perhaps even clearer when we compare it to the worst performers at each level. The worst performing supervisors are very expert and less transitory. So great that they probably were great as non-managers, but then become promoted to become worse supervisors. And if we look at the worst middle managers, do you recognize this profile? It happens to be almost exactly the success profile of the supervisors. So what we basically have here that we are providing scientific proof that both the Peter principle of people becoming promoted to their level of incompetence until they are no longer the best, and we add that they also get promoted to their level of demotivation when it's no longer so fun. And you can see that also the best middle managers, they tend to become promoted to worse higher managers. This is something that we also saw with the decision styles. There is a terrible waste that we can watch by looking at this. So the best the supervisors are expert with some linear, spiral, transitory. But when you promote them, they tend to become some of the worst middle managers. The best middle managers have a balance of all 4. If you promote them, they tend to become a worse director that needs less expert and more of the other 3. So what do you then do when you promote the best middle manager? You lose the best middle manager and you get one of the worst directors. And that's not all, because you also need to replace the promoted middle manager. And who do you replace them with? Often the best supervisor. And then when you do that, you will lose the best supervisor and will gain also a worse middle manager. So we are systematically wasting about 10 to 30% of our best managers by over promoting them. This was already realized much earlier by Lawrence Peter in the Peter Principle. And then we found these results, decision style, in about 15 years ago, and now more recently also in the career model. So if you have over promoted someone, shouldn't just fire them if they can't perform at the next level? Well, that would be very wasteful, because then you are firing someone who was the best manager at the previous level. And you have to replace them. And who do you replace them with? Often the best of the one below. So overpromoted managers should be that they have the proven potential of being best at the previous level. And that should be re-engaged, what we call return to success. But we almost never do that, because there are other words for this: demotion, failure, derailing. But by calling it return to success, we can save their great performance and great potential for the previous level, by realizing that the leadership pipeline has so different success factors. So you should not automatically believe that the best performer at one level will also be the best performer at the next level. It tends to be the opposite. And we should avoid giving them all the reward in connection with the promotion. That makes it more difficult to return to success. And we should encourage not only the one way is up, because there are only 10% who can climb to the next level, because of the nature of a hierarchy. And we should not have these demotions as pay cuts and stigmas of So anyway, I'm not sure. I'm hearing somebody in a different language, but I assume that is not directed at me, or at least I don't understand it. We can also apply this to change. If you view the 4 different career concepts and sets of motives as segments, these segments are quite differently engaged. You engage experts through stable, secure refinement. You engage linears through competitive, efficient leadership. You engage spirals to more creative, cross-functional teamwork. And you engage transitories with more self-managed, varied mobile networking. And if you're able to engage an expert, you tend to get contributions like high quality and long-term commitment. Engaged linear contributions is about driving towards higher performance and greater growth. Engaged spiral contributions are more innovative, cooperative, skill diversity. And engaged transitories tend to be high-speed, flexible customer adaptation. And you actually need all those 4 sets of contributions. But however, a normal manager only engages one of these 4 segments. A good manager are able to engage 2 of these segments. A bad manager doesn't engage any of the segments. But while we would like to talk about engaging leadership, it's even better if you can engage 3 or 4 of these segments. And when it comes to change, they actually contribute to change in also complementary ways. Transitories are great at finding new opportunities. That spirals are great at creatively develop into business possibilities, and that are grown by linears in a competitive way, and can then be harvested once they have grown more sustainably by experts. So it's not a relay of 4 times 100 meters, it's relay between 4 different distances, but they complement one another. Another career application, change application of the career model is who should do what work in change. If you know who your experts are, the experts should focus on the islands of stability that's always involved in change. They should be ensured real security, and then they can maintain the existing value creation. You should avoid exposing them to a lot of uncertainty and insecurity. instability would be another thing to avoid. You can't avoid everything for everybody because then there will be no change, but you can avoid what's the worst, most disengaging part of change for different segments. Linears, they like the whole idea of growth. Let's acquire some more companies so we can grow faster. Let's show leadership. Let's improve effectiveness. Let's win against our competitors and other challenges. What you should avoid with linears is demotion and downsizing. These are really disengaging things for linears. Finally, then we have spirals. They like to use their competences in new related areas, integrate the old and new operations, have strategic renewal projects and creative cooperation. What you should avoid with spirals is to not involve them. And finally, transitory, they like to network with new people, some fast action in new places where we can do new things. What you should avoid with them is to not involve them. Now, is this how we typically divide change work? The sad answer is no. How do we typically divide change work? Who are mostly involved? Well, the linears have to make the tough decisions about downsizing and things like that. And experts tend to be involved because they are representing important functions. And who are the least involved? The more marginal, spiral, and transitory. So that we systematically divide change work in disengaging ways, making different people resist this change, but because of different reasons. And still, we need to do all this. So with more career knowledge, we could divide change in much more engaging ways and thereby reduce the resistance that is quite common. Another way of looking at change is overall change strategies like competitive growth, quality refinement, cooperative innovation, and immediate opportunities. And we see linears like competitive growth the most. Expert is much more interested in long-term quality refinement. Spirals like this cooperative innovation, and transitories are the fastest to capture these immediate opportunities, including adapting to various customers. And if we focus especially on the growth corner here, we can talk about the growth diamond with 4 different growth strategies, where acquisition is the linear of the linear, so to speak. This is the fastest way to win by simply buying growth, buying other companies. There is also organic growth. That is a much slower thing. That is a mix between linear and expert, where you make the growth based on what you have done before. And then we have, you can cooperate growth through alliances, and that's more of a linear spiral combination. And you can also more informally network growth, which is more a mix between transitory and linear. So all of these 4 growth strategies do complement one another, and they are related to the different career concepts and motives. And we can look at their benefits, strengths, and weaknesses. Organic is good because it tends to not create resistance, and you have more control of it, but it's the most slow one, so minus for speed. Mergers and acquisitions are much faster, at least we hope that they are much faster, and you think you have more control than you would have in an alliance, but the cost is greater, the flexibility, you have to buy the whole thing, not just pieces that you like, and there tends to be a lot of resistance. If you then compare that with alliances, they tend to be more flexible, they are less costly, You think that they are faster, but sometimes they take more time than you hope for either, or also. And you have less control over it. You have to share control, and that's problematic, especially for linears. So anyway, the idea is that there is no single growth strategy that is better than all the others. They complement one another again, and therefore we have found that those organizations that grow the most try to combine at least two of these growth strategies. And the most common combination is acquisitions and organic, which is then the traditional way of either buying or making your growth. But we have done a specific, what we call the Swedish growth cocktail that was published earlier in the Academy of Management, where we found out that IKEA and H&M and Ericsson are examples where combined organic and alliances. They don't acquire other companies, but they cooperate with their suppliers, and they organically grow their retailers, so to speak. And that's a very powerful combination that we are describing in this article. Then these career motives are not only important in the leadership pipeline or in change, it's actually something that helps our everyday engagement. If you use your career profile to learn more about your drivers and killers, you can take greater own responsibility for your engagement, and that can relieve the managers or even co-workers and give them more energy in turn. You can communicate your drivers and killers to your managers so they become more engaging leaders, and to your co-worker team members so they you can teamwork in more engaging ways. You can divide not only change work but everyday work in more engaging ways, so you get more of the drivers and less of the killers for both managers, yourself, and your co-workers. And you can also rotate job and have internal mobility to increase retention. And all of these goodies you can improve with the help of the career profile as coaches. You don't even have to call yourself career coaches, because there is an idea that career coaches is just about these rare job changes that we do now and then. But I would say that most coaching is actually career-based, because it's not only about rare job changes, it's also about the everyday work that you do in your present job. It's also about how you're being led by your boss and how well you understand one another. And if you are a manager, how well you lead your direct reports, how you understand their motivation, and how you teamwork with colleagues. And we haven't talked about organizational culture, but the career model also have an organizational part, so you can look at the fit between yourself and the organization: strategy, structure, appraisal, and rewards. But we have talked about these change processes. And knowing your career thinking, and especially your career motives in your heart, you can do this in a much better way, much more engaging ways. And this is something that coaches can help clients with to a great extent. So we like to end with offering you participants some free bonuses. If you like a digital copy of this International Growth Through Cooperation, Brand-Driven Strategies, Leadership and Career Development in Sweden, with this Swedish growth cocktail, we can send you that. We also have our most popular LinkedIn article is about co-creating great value of engagement for individuals and organizations, which has this four rings of engagement that we just talked about. We can send you a link to that. And the most valuable of our free bonuses is that you can actually do your own career report for free and discuss it with a certified career practitioner. If you want one, two, or all three of these, please write us emails about it. And if you come from Brazil, please write to Flavio as our Brazilian representative. And if you're outside of Brazil, please email Vincente, who is responsible for Decision Dynamics South America, positioned in Chile, but also covering other South American companies. Or if you're outside of South America, please email me. Here are the emails. And we will then send you the invitation to answer the question and get your career profile and have a meeting with you. We'll send you a digital link to this. We'll send you a link to the LinkedIn article, whatever you want. Now, any questions about this or anything else that we were talking about? I don't know if I should see if there comes up something in the chat. But
Flávio, teu microfone está desligado.
Professor Larson, a maior parte dos presentes nessa apresentação acredito que sejam coaches. E muito frequentemente, pelo menos em minha experiência, clientes procuram ajustar comportamentos associados a seus conceitos de carreira, que são diferentes das motivações de carreira. E isso é uma dificuldade para o coach, porque o cliente persegue uma carreira que, na verdade, não o motiva, mas por alguma razão ele tem o ideal de carreira, um conceito de carreira muito forte e está perseguindo. Alguma sugestão de como lidar com essa situação?
Well, if you just tell them that they are wrong, they typically don't listen to it. If you present these career concepts, the expert linear spiral transitory, you tend to broaden you. Oh, whoops, that was more. I was just thinking of one or two of these concepts because we are taught that one or two of those concepts are the most ideal, and the others we tend to misunderstand or devalue. But by answering the 38 questions, you actually give the respondents' heart a chance to knock on their head, and this is saying that we have these gaps, and those gaps. One gap is what's called misdirection. This is what we, like Joe, had a linear misdirection when the blue bar is higher than the red bar. So he idealized the linear. He will accept promotions. He will seek promotions. He will ask for promotions, and but he will not be as engaged as he think he would be, because he has not listened to his heart. He has been fooled by other people saying that this is what ought to be the ideal. So by learning about that there are more options than one or two, and answering these 38 questions, which help you understand to measure both what you think, but also what engages you, what energizes you, what motivates you more. And then we can see what kind of differences, because most people have more or less gaps, and having that as an early part of a coaching engagement, whether it doesn't have to be career coaching, it can be leadership coaching, it can be team coaching, it can be change process coaching. In all of those instances, you will learn so much from listening more to your heart and being able to communicate around those insights in a more constructive way. Sorry if I got a little bit long-winded there, but
Obrigado.
it was a big question.
Muito obrigado, professor Larson. Uma outra pergunta. No Brasil, nós temos muita dificuldade com o return to success, por questões legais, o rebaixamento salarial dificilmente é permitido. Ou seja, quando se erra numa promoção, a situação se torna inviável, porque somos obrigados a, possivelmente, afastar esse profissional. Quais são suas experiências em return to success?
Well, it's terribly underutilized because it's like swearing in the linear church that saying that it's good to demote. I mean that sounds horrible. So very few do it, but it is still a waste. And I'm happy you raised the issue of money. The problem is that you have the biggest salary rise you tend to get is when you get promoted. However, that makes you get stuck both legally and emotionally and stuff. If we stop tying the highest monetary reward to the promotion in itself, the promotion should be more of an option, showing that if you perform great at the new level, then you get the added rewards, but not before you have shown that you actually can make the transition. And that's a very difficult transition. So we shouldn't jump the reward gun by rewarding people for performance that they haven't done yet, or past performance. You shouldn't get more pay to perform less, but that's what most promotions, internal promotions, result in. Anything else?
Uma outra pergunta, acho que ainda temos alguns minutos. Como lidar, que ferramentas nós podemos utilizar quando líder e liderado entram em conflito? Quando o liderado não se permite entender a orientação do líder.
Well, we have found that spectacle slide that we had in the beginning on how we view one another is a better way for people to understand their differences in a more constructive way. It's not that I am higher than you or I'm smarter than you. Just by viewing what's and the ideal career development, we tend to misunderstand or even distrust one another. This is not how we should view each other. And if you have a workshop regarding this, or even in a developmental dialogue, or in a coaching dialogue, by seeing this is how we tend to view one another, but that's dysfunctional. We could view each other in a more appreciative and more trustful ways than the spectacle slides with the talent blind spots do. Then we can actually understand how we misunderstood one another or even distrusted one another beforehand. and find out that we can help one another instead. So by together we can create more value if we understand one another rather than if we devalue one another.
Temos mais alguma pergunta? Bom, se não há mais perguntas, eu gostaria de agradecer ao professor Larson pela apresentação. Eu, pessoalmente, uso intensamente a avaliação de carreira da Decision Dynamics e é um instrumento importante no alinhamento do que é que nós vamos tratar durante o processo de coaching. Nós vamos encaminhar a vocês via chat o formulário de avaliação. Esse formulário de avaliação também é o formulário que permitirá a vocês receberem, se forem associados da ICF Brasil ou associados da ICF, os seus créditos de educação. Se você não é associado da ICF, gostaríamos muito de tê-lo na ICF. Esse é um evento que mostra como a ICF pode apoiar o seu desenvolvimento profissional. Você pode também entrar em contato com o e-mail apoio.gestão@icfbrasil.org e gostaríamos de tê-lo nos próximos eventos da ICW. Temos eventos muito interessantes por acontecer ainda hoje, amanhã e sexta-feira, e gostaríamos de tê-los conosco. Muito obrigado, professor Larson, muito obrigado a todos vocês, tenham um ótimo dia.
Thank you very much yourself. It's been great.
Yeah.
And we look forward to your emails about the free bonuses.
Thank you. Obrigada, pessoal. Até daqui a pouco.